Hello, I'm Zara Batstra, and welcome to the Eternal Cavern, and welcome to the Eternal Cavern, and welcome to the Eternal Cavern, and welcome to the Eternal Cavern. Oh, sorry about that. There's a bit of an echo in here. Anyway, I was so kindly tagged in the seriously well-read tag by Allie at a genteel black hole. This tag was created by Randy Ray, the literate Texan. And I'm just going to begin this by saying that I am not qualified in the least to give my opinion on this topic because I haven't read very much compared to everyone else on BookTube, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So, prompt number 1 is, what book made you take reading seriously? And I don't know about taking reading seriously. I think I take just about everything I do seriously, but one book that made me reconsider how serious reading can be was Demian by Hermann Hesse. And I read this book in my late teens, early 20s, probably at just about the right time to read this book. And it was the first book that really said something to me inside that I didn't really get from other books up to that point. And it challenged me, like crossed bounds. It wasn't really fantasy. It was rooted in reality, but it floated in that creative space where only books can take you, which I've really come to love. So, prompt 2 is, what book did you pretend to understand? Be honest. I'm going to be pretentious and say that I pretend to understand everything I read. So, what I mean is, words are just an approximation of what someone is trying to say, like the idea in their head, and we only can go by the words that are on the page. And like, it's really hard to find the right words, which, if you can tell by the way I'm talking, I have a really hard time finding the right words when I talk. And when you write something, it's just as hard, unless the subject matter is really straightforward and simple. It's up to the reader to try to understand where the writer is coming from and what their intention is. But that's what's fun about reading. I feel like it's like trying to solve a mystery, and the author is leaving breadcrumbs and fingerprints all over the page, and we have to take those clues and use, our reasoning skills and the context clues and our own imagination to try to sculpt a vision of what the author is trying to say. And it's just exciting to unravel and unwrap someone else's thought process. There are books that say everything, like they describe everything, talk about everything in really, really detailed ways, and then they make every action obvious. In those books, you can pretty much guess what the author is trying to say, but it's not, it's still not guaranteed. And those kind of books, a lot of people, especially on BookTube, they say that the author doesn't trust the reader, like if they're that obvious. So it's kind of a boring way to write if you don't leave anything to the reader's imagination. Okay, prompt 3. Which 3 books are on your personal required reading list? So these are 3 books that I've read throughout my years that have really stuck with me. One book is a really recent read, but these books impacted me in a big way, and I just feel like these are ideas that everyone should be familiar with. The first book is Song of Myself by Walt Whitman. It's a poem that celebrates the beauty of being alive and just reveling in the natural world and just being able to experience everything in life. But being, too caught up in yourself can lead you down a dark path, which is the theme of the next book on my list, which is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's a creepy book. It's scarier than I anticipated, but it's still a really, really good book. And my last book is a book that I read last year. It was actually the best book I read all year last year, and that's the autobiography of Malcolm X with Alex Haley. And it's just Malcolm X talking about everything in his life from his childhood and his troubled youth and, finding his way to becoming a leader. I just fell in love with Malcolm in this book. I mean, he's definitely a flawed person, but he had a good heart and was a very brave man. Okay, so number 4 is what author have you been avoiding? And that would be Shakespeare, because I don't like reading in the play format. I'd rather go see a play on stage. I saw Hamlet live, and it was surprisingly funny. I was very entertaining and very dramatic, and it was a great experience, but I don't think it would be the same if I sat down and read it. Also in high school, I read Romeo and Juliet with the class, and it was easier because the teacher was there to explain the different language and words, and we discussed each scene as a group, which made it a lot easier to process and more fun to go through. And we watched like an old 70s performance, like an old 70s movie of Romeo and Juliet, and that was really good too. So yeah, I definitely liked how the characters came alive on film instead of reading the words on the page. So yeah, and the words, the Shakespearean language is just really hard for me. I mean, I already have a hard time reading as it is, and just throwing in different words makes it a lot harder for me. So I know I should read Shakespeare based on the two plays that I've experienced. I know that the stories are good. I just can't get myself to embark on that chore. It feels like more work to read a play than enjoyment. Okay, number 5. What's the hardest book you've ever finished? So, I'm a quitter. So if a book is really hard and I'm not getting it right away, I'll abandon it and try something else because I feel like life's too short to be frustrated with an activity that's supposed to be enjoyable. But one difficult book that I finished, which I'm not glad I finished, I feel like I wasted my time on it, was Beloved by Toni Morrison. And I mean, everyone talks about her beautiful prose and everything, but the way she wrote it was intentionally difficult. And I just feel like the story she was telling was really a really straightforward story she could have told in a short story format, and I would have appreciated it a lot more, but I felt like she was manipulating me as a reader and playing games, and I really started to resent the book, and the payoff at the end was not worth it. A lot of times, the experience of reading itself is the journey, that you're supposed to enjoy, but she made it so difficult that it wasn't enjoyable at all. So, I mean, and she was saying stuff that I already knew about, like, yeah, slavery's bad. Roots by Alex Haley said more about the institution in a more profound and complex way than Toni Morrison did. Okay, so number 6 is what's a book that changed how you read? And I'm gonna say going through and finishing The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon really taught me how to pace myself as a reader and to be a more patient reader. So before I tackled Gibbon, I would just read one book straight through. Like I couldn't read a whole book in one setting, but I would dedicate all of my reading time to one book until I finished that book and then move on. And you really can't do that with something so huge and intense as the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. You kind of have to like read some of it and then sprinkle in a little bit of fiction while you are in the process of finishing that giant work. But I'm really proud of myself that I stuck with it and read through it, and I learned a lot, and I really liked Gibbon's writing style, and reading in that way established like a reading habit for me of like reading a book piecemeal day by day. So I took that reading habit and I used it last year to read In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust over the entire year. That was really a fun experience for me, and I fine-tuned my reading of that by just like getting up early in the morning to read Proust for half an hour every day. And I finished Proust, and I felt really accomplished doing that. And then now I'm in the process of reading every day from the Bible. And well, I skip one or 2 days a week on the Bible. Like I haven't read the Bible yet today. I should be able to read through the Bible throughout the year, even if I do skip a day or two here and there. And then another book that changed the way I read is Wuthering Heights, because it was one of the first audiobooks I read. Like I took a long break from reading and I fell into like a really deep depression, and I didn't feel at that time that I had the mental capacity to focus on a page. So I found Wuthering Heights on audiobook and listened to that, and it got me back into reading again, and it proved to me that listening to an audiobook is just as valuable as reading a book on the page because it's the same story. It's just, you're listening to it instead of reading it in your head. I used to look down on audiobooks and I never tried an audiobook because I didn't consider audiobooks as reading, and but I do. It is reading, and you know, especially if you're unable to read words on a page, it's a powerful tool. Okay, so prompt 7 is quality versus quantity. Would you rather read 100 good books in a year or 10 great books? So my first instinct is to say 10 great books because realistically I can't read 100 books in a year. But if I could read 100 books in a year, I would choose to read 10 great books and 90 good books. I can't see going a whole year without reading a really great book. I can like feast on a great book. You know, if a book takes me like 2 weeks to finish, I can think about that really great book or that really great reading experience for another at least another 2 weeks or longer. Or I could even think about that book for the rest of my life, like the books I talked about earlier, my three required books, Song of Myself, Picture of Dorian Gray, and Malcolm X. I couldn't see sacrificing reading those great books just to read some books that are just okay. If I had to choose, it would be 10 great books. And, you know, with my extra time, I would just reread those books or, you know, find a different hobby. Number 8 is, which genre are you embarrassed to say you have not read? Well, I have read horror. You know, Picture of Dorian Gray is a horror book, and I've read some other horror short stories and short books, but I avoid it because when I read something, especially if it's scary, it stays with me. Like, and if I watch anything scary too, those feelings and images stay with me for way too long. And, you know, I don't like having nightmares and feeling upset. So I stay away from scary stories, but I still get freaked out when I think about the big toe in scary stories to tell in the dark. Maybe I should have made my booktube persona a chicken. All right, so number 9, which book do you think most people misread? I'm going to say that, again, unless you're the author or you have telepathy, you're probably misreading books, all the books you read, because there's a difference between what the author says and what they mean. This difference is magnified even more in translated books because the reader has to rely on what the translator thinks the author meant to say. And then there's also like the differences between cultures, like different situations have different meanings in different areas of the world. You know, unless you live there or are familiar with the culture, that's something that you're missing a lot of. You know, I'm really sad that I couldn't read Proust in the original French because I think there's a lot of like puns and like satire. I mean, I did find the writing funny at times, but I think a lot of it was lost on me because I'm not French and I didn't grow up in, you know, the turn of the century Paris. And then yeah, there's the difference between time periods too. All right. Anyway, so the 10th prompt is, what does seriously well read mean to you? So I feel like this is the hardest question. Number one took me a long time to answer to, but this one, you know, there's a few different ways you can think of this. Like you can think of like reading as like a buffet, and someone who's well read has tasted all the different dishes. Or you can think of being well read as like just focusing in on one genre and reading everything that you can find in that genre. Or, you know, if you like history and that specific period in time, I think both views are valid, and I don't know. Sometimes I get to where I want to read a lot on a certain subject. Like I do this more with nonfiction than fiction. Oh, this just happened to me. Like I read a book about the Persians, and then I want to read more about that time period. So like I'll keep digging into like something. So I'll like do little offshoots. So I'll read like two or three different books that are kind of related, but then something else will catch my eye, I'll switch directions. Oh, and last year I went down the slavery rabbit hole. I don't know, either way, or just reading everything you can get your hands on. I think also like another way to look at being well read is being a well-rounded reader. Like if you just read books that you agree with, you get caught in like an echo chamber. So it's better to like read and be familiar with both sides to fully understand the entire topic. That might be the most important aspect of being well read is like challenging your own beliefs and stepping outside of what is comfortable for you. The last prompt is to tag others. I'm going to tag Jim at Great Books, Big Ideas, Nicole at Noteworthy Fiction, and Nate at Big Nate's Book Reviews. So these three are really good YouTube channels. You should go watch them. They are far more qualified to answer all of these questions than I am. If you want to do the seriously well read tag video, I've listed the prompts below, and make sure to watch Randy Ray's video. He has a lot of good insight, and so does Allie and everyone else. No, I haven't watched all the other. There's a lot of people have done this tag. You can get a lot of good book recommendations from this tag, so it's a really fun tag. So I'm gonna stop rambling, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.